Hey guys, my name is Matimio, and welcome to another episode of Sunday Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming or Battlefield-related questions, and then I will give my humble opinion on them. To get the formalities out of the way real quick, if you would like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below, or by sending me a Facebook and Twitter message. The first question for today comes from Kevin, and it is, here's an idea that I just thought of. What if you were able to turn off Levolution through your own server settings? This would allow players to play on maps such as Gulf of Oman without the sandstorm. What are your thoughts on this? Well, initially, I wasn't really on board with this idea because, at least according to DICE's definition of Levolution, it's basically everything in the game. Raising and lowering the bollards, blowing up walls, taking down the skyscraper in Siege of Shanghai, all of that, according to DICE, is labeled as Levolution. And so from that viewpoint, I wouldn't want that because that's kind of what makes Battlefield 4 Battlefield 4. If you weren't able to blow up walls or they disabled everything that was dynamic in the game, I feel like that would detract from the overall experience. But I'm assuming what you're talking about are those major Levolution moments. The skyscraper falling in, the sandstorm rolling in Gulf of Oman, and from that standpoint, I don't have a problem with that at all. If a server is able to maintain a player base and they're able to have people continuously going back to their server because they've turned off the Levolution, that would be a great indication that some of these maps seriously suck with it on. Gulf of Oman is the best example. Like, you hit it out of the park with that one, because while at the start of the round, it's a great map. It looks gorgeous, it plays out well, helicopters are flying around, jets are up in the sky, but as soon as that sandstorm rolls in, it ruins the experience. Jets, helicopters, not a problem anymore. I guess if you don't want to deal with that, then the map becomes a playground for you. But even down on the ground, the sandstorm just gets irritating. Like, it'd be great if it just came in for like a couple of minutes and then rolled out after that and it returned to normal or had like a bunch of sand everywhere. That would have been the best way to handle it, at least in my mind. But to have the option to turn off that sandstorm and experience Gulf of Oman the way it's supposed to be experienced, sounds like a good idea. Like, I can't really think of any negative aspect of it. Some roadblocks that we might run into, though, is that it may not be as easy as just flipping a switch for DICE. They may have to spend some development time going in and working out their engine to allow servers the ability to just turn it off and on. I don't know. I've never worked with Frostbite engine. I've never made a video game, and so while it doesn't sound like it would be all that difficult, it doesn't sound like it would be all that challenging, it could require a fair amount of work on the part of DICE, and that may not be where they want to allocate their time and their resources. So that might be one of the roadblocks. The second roadblock that I can think of is that DICE probably has some pride in their work. I'm sure they put a lot of time and effort into creating these major Levolution moments, and the idea that the player base just wants to turn it off and basically let all that hard work go to waste may seem like a slight slap in the face. Sure, the sandstorm on Oman is really annoying, but you know that someone put a lot of time and effort into making it look amazing. And it does. Like, that is an epic set piece. Seeing that thing come out in the distance and slowly roll on in is one of the coolest things in Battlefield. Yeah, it gets really annoying, but the first time you experience it, it is easily one of the coolest things in the game. And so you know that someone put their heart and soul into creating these awesome moments, and the idea that the players now just want to turn it off may seem like a slap in the face to them. And so while I do agree with you, having the option to turn off these major Levolution moments seems like a good idea, those may be some of the reasons why DICE would never add this into the game. The next question for today is, I have now learned that the sidearms in Battlefield Hardline will be class specific. That kinda pisses me off. I think that the weapon list is great, but was it really a good thing to make the sidearms class specific? The funny thing about this is that I had the complete opposite reaction, because when I learned that pistols were going to be specific for all of the kits, I thought this was a great way for Visceral to be able to balance out the classes a little bit more than they normally would have been able to. The best example of that I can think of is the sniper class. The bolt-action rifles and the DMRs are going to be their forte. They're going to be amazing at taking people out at a distance, but as soon as someone closes the gap, this is true in basically every Battlefield game, they're going to be at a disadvantage. And so one way that Visceral is trying to push a little bit more power into the favor of the sniper class is that if you are a good player and you predict that someone is going to be directly next to you, well, if you use their pistols, which are automatic weapons, they're the only automatic weapon or secondary weapons in the game, they're exclusive for the sniper class, then you're going to have something that is at least reasonable reasonably good in those confrontations. Admittedly, I thought that they were a little bit too good when I played the alpha. I saw some other YouTubers were running around with these things as primaries. Too good, a little bit too good, but as soon as they get the balance right, and I have faith that they will get the balance right, it was just a really good way, in my opinion, to push some of the power into the favor of the sniper class, because admittedly, at least right now in a lot of Battlefield games, they are normally one of the weaker classes, just by the very nature of using the bolt-action rifles. And so overall, while yeah, I can see where you're coming from, if you wanted to play as the medic and you have your favorite pistol in the game, mine is the MP-443, and I don't even think it's going to be in Hardline, which is a little disappointing, but if you have your favorite pistol, not being able to use it depending on your class is a little frustrating. I get that, but if you look at the grand scheme of things, it allows them to allocate power, a slight power, because these are pistols, this is not going to be game changing, but allows them to allocate a little bit of power or take away some power from each of the classes. And so from my standpoint, I think that overall, as long as it's done right, as long as they're well balanced, it is going to be a solid addition into Battlefield Hardline. The next question for today comes from Red on Evil, and it is, what do you think of the MP-APS in its current state? I don't see anybody using it, and I tried to get some use out of it, but failed. What do you think could be done to improve its utility? Admittedly, I completely forgot about this gadget for the support class until you just mentioned it just now. Like, that's how infrequently I see this thing used on the battlefield. Conceptually, it sounds like a great supportive, gadget. Places down on an objective while you're either trying to attack it or defend it, and then it will act as a bubble shield for any projectile flying your way, a tank shell or an RPG, and hopefully you'll either save your life or a teammate's life. Like, who wouldn't want something like that? Like, that sounds really cool conceptually. In practice, though, it is easily one of the worst, if not the worst gadget in the game. The riot shield is right up there with it, and ironically, both of these are for the support class, but it provides almost no utility. It provides almost no benefit because it's so situational. I know that some people have tried to make the argument that it's fantastic for tank combat because if you think about it, you place this down next to a friendly tank driver, it eats one of the shells of the enemy tank, it acts as a secondary active protection, and that will hopefully give your tank the leg up and he can come out of that firefight alive. Sounds great conceptually, but once again, in reality, I've never seen this performed. Admittedly, I'm not an avid tank driver. I mainly stick down on the ground. I do dabble every so often in the vehicles, but I've never seen this performed effectively on the battlefield. If you think about it, if you're the tank driver and you're trying to pull this off, as soon as the enemy tank rounds the bend and he starts to fire at you, well, as soon as you jump out of the vehicle to place this thing down on the ground, hopefully allowing you to get the leg up, well, he's either going to take you outright by just directly shooting at you, killing you, giving the enemy maybe a free vehicle, or he's just gonna continue to pelt at your tank, giving him the advantage anyways. So yeah, sure, it might eat one of his shells, but at the end of the day, he was already able to get another shell into your tank while you were going through that entire process. It just doesn't seem like an effective tactic. And so what I would like to see done is why not have this gadget catch grenades? Like, why isn't this a thing already? I realize it's not realistic. I understand that in reality, this thing is designed to catch high velocity projectiles, RPGs and tank shells and things like that. But in a video game where it's completely useless and it serves no function, if it had the option to take out a couple of grenades out of the sky, I could see that making it a hell of a lot better. It's still not going to be amazing. It's not going to turn into this god bubble shield that just nabs everything out of the sky. It has a cooldown, it is directional, but it would at least bring some power into the gadget, and I could see that, at least from my viewpoint, being a lot better. But I'd like to get your guys' take on this. Do you think that would be an appropriate way at bumping up the power of the MPS, or do you think it should stay useless, you don't like that idea at all, and they should leave it as it is? The next question for today comes from Brian, and it is, what do you think of Battlefield 4 sounds deafening when big explosions are close or tanks shoot by you, even just a ringing in your ear? Now this would be a cool way at adding in a nice layer of realism into Battlefield Battlefield 4. Because if you think about it, if an explosion happens 4 feet away or a tank fires off a shell directly next to you, you're gonna get a ringing in your ear. Like that's gonna happen. Your ears are gonna scream, they're gonna hate you for a couple of minutes, and that's just gonna be the natural outcome. And so from a realistic standpoint, that would be a cool addition into the game. The downside of it though, and the reason why I would not expect this in Battlefield 4 or even in a future Battlefield game, is that explosions are constant and consistent in this series. There is almost always going to be an explosion happening directly next to you. And if you always had this ringing in your ear to those explosions, I feel like that would detract from the experience. Sure, it's realistic. Sure, it would add a nice layer of a reality there. But because, of course, this is a video game and there is just so many explosive devices in Battlefield 4, I think that overall having that constant ringing in your ear would get a little annoying, and I'm assuming that might be one of the reasons why it's not already in the game. So, solid suggestion, but I just would not expect it. But yeah, guys, that is about it for today's Sunday Mailbox. I hope you enjoyed. Once again, if you would like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below or by sending me a Facebook and Twitter message. But until tomorrow, guys, have a good one and take it easy.